Tableau Ambassadors, who they are, and how you can become one.
It's not about me anymore. It's about new folks, bringing people in and kind of helping them, really understand that, hey, they can do this too.
Welcome to the Data Nerd Podcast. I'm your host, Nisar Ahmed. Join me as we explore the inner data nerd inside all of us. Dive into the world of data alongside special guests who not only share their wealth of experience and knowledge, but also unveil what truly makes them data nerds. This podcast is brought to you by Business Intelligence. That's BIZNIS Intelligence. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel at Business Intelligence to stay up to date with Tableau training and the Data Nerd podcast. Connect with me on LinkedIn or stream the Data Nerd podcast across all major podcast platforms. I have the pleasure today of welcoming Cesar Picco. Cesar, welcome to the Data Nerd podcast.
Hey, thank you for inviting me. This is really great. And I think if there's a podcast out there about data nerds, I think I found home. So this is perfect.
You know what? This leads into the first question, but let me just introduce you first, and then we'll talk about being a data nerd because that kind of fits into the theme here. So Cesar is a senior software engineer at T-Mobile with nearly 15 years of experience in the BI space, and is also a Tableau ambassador, I believe, for the 4 years, right?
I think so. I think it's been 4 years now. So.
Okay, great. His passion for data visualization, sparked by an early Tableau trial, has driven him to help organizations establish centers of excellence and build communities of analysts, engineers, and data scientists. Known for his expertise in data automation and dynamic dashboards, Cesar has trained countless professionals to explore and analyze their data. Based in Northern Virginia, he excels at solving unique problems and guiding others in shaping their career paths in data. So, Cesar, this leads me to my first question. And this being the Data Nerd podcast, I ask everybody, are you a data nerd? And I think I already know the answer to that, right?
I am very much a data nerd. Yeah, I've got things like data visualizations hanging up on the walls,
Yeah.
and yeah, very much. I'm a very when it comes autodidactic when it comes to nerdiness, but yes, it's definitely my nerdiness goes in many directions.
That's
So
awesome. That's awesome. And so my question is, when did you realize you were a data nerd? Tell me your story.
it's kind of funny because I think I've always resisted being a data nerd. When I was younger, there was a lot of like,
Mm,
no, I don't want to do that. I remember in high school they had us do a spreadsheet course,
okay.
and I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that. I kind of fought my way through and did excellent at the course, and I learned, it's like you pretty much learn, what a cell is, what a column is, what a row is,
Right.
fun stuff like that. Which I mean, I I kind of played it off. I was pretending I didn't want to be there, but I did really well in the in that class.
Mm,
And it was kind of funny because like that was my dad's world. That's what business people did. I wasn't
yeah.
thinking that in school. It's like I wanted to play sports and have fun. And I'd taken a programming class when I was actually fourth grade.
Mm,
My parents got me into the summer classes so I could do something, not be around the house all day. And by doing so, sorry if you're catching that or not. It's the lawnmower outside.
no, no, it's all
Okay,
good.
yeah, but the but from there we let's see, summer classes, programming. It was fourth grade for me. It was really young.
Mm,
And really all I wanted to do was get like little animations like breakdancing on screen.
yeah.
And that's all I focused on. It was, you start off with like, print statements and then for loops, and
Right.
it was just kind of it was kind of how you started, but it's like I wasn't interested in the business part of it. And they kept kind of showing us how to do all this business stuff.
Mm.
And I'm like, "No, get me to the graphic stuff. I want to like start building graphics and
You want the cool stuff, right?
little animations. Yeah. How do I do that?
Yeah.
And I kind of figured it out there, but it's funny. It's like all the logic and everything else. You kind of have to go through that first.
Yeah.
And somehow I figured it's funny because it's like I skipped over it, but I didn't. It's like I retained it, and it was in there. And later on, when I was in high school, same story. My dad's like, "No, you're not sitting on the couch all summer.
Mm,
You're coming, putting you to work." And he took me to his office, and he's like, "Hey, look, I've got this, this new package. It's a database. We put this together and make it so that we can kind of record all these things we need to record. And you create forms, and they go and input into the database. And that's kind of what I did for my summer. And I didn't like it. It was the
mm.
kind of like forced high school job. I mean, I
Yeah.
paid for it, which is great. And I guess the company got a pretty cheap database from a
Yeah.
high school kid. But that's kind of where I picked it all up. It's kind of where I found that, but it wasn't until college where helping graduate students out. I'm like, oh no, you need to do this, you need to do that, and like helping them record their data and work with their data. It's kind of where I discovered it. So it was that's kind of where it started, and that's kind of where it became a little bit more professional. But
You know, I
still,
can
I resisted.
I can relate because my dad also would push me to do things in the summer that, when you're a young kid, you don't want to like work, you don't want to learn, you want to take a break in the summer, right? And so maybe that part of that is like, and that's why you didn't want to do it. But when you look back, I'm fortunate that my dad and you probably think the same way that your dad pushed you into doing those things because that really paved the way to make it easier to enter into data and work with data, right?
It's funny because it's like it wasn't just my dad though. Growing up too, I guess this is really early. Well, I guess early along the PC cycle.
Yeah.
My mom was working at Xerox, and she worked with a group that was called Xerox PARC,
Mm.
and they had some really cool machinery. She was on the kind of the operating side of it.
Yeah.
This was more operational, where she was actually running a lot of things on the machinery, and they were sending like computers out to our house. We had like the first GUI computer in our basement as I was growing up.
Mm.
And this is the same thing that Steve Jobs saw, and then Bill
Yeah.
Gates saw. They went and they built Windows and they built Mac OS on. And I had that in my basement. And the other part of it was kind of knowing what was possible. I
Mm.
had this machine I can go to, but it was like really special. And it had programs like almost like a Word, like a very light Word type program on it. It had like the drawing programs. It had everything there. There was a
Yeah.
mouse. And it had this like crazy 3-button mouse. It was
Yeah.
optical,
Yeah. Yeah.
and uh, no computers had mouses. You would have to use the keyboards.
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool to kind of know what the future was. And then I would go to school and see these like crazy 286s and the Apple IIes and things. And I'm like, what is this garbage? It's like you have to type everything. And I'm like, oh, wait, where's the mouse? Where's the GUI?
Yeah. No, and so that's great. Like your mom also got you into that. And also, so my mom was she didn't work, but what she would do at home, my dad was a computer science teacher. And so
Okay.
he actually taught my mom about computers. And then they would both run weekend schools from our basement for kids in the community who did come to our basement. And my mom would teach them about computers and computer hard. We would like disassemble the computers, put it back together, and then she'd teach like the software. And this is before Windows, right? So you remember
Yeah.
Lotus 1, 2, 3, things like that, how to like use that to for spreadsheets and whatnot. So that was really cool.
Kind of funny. I think you just kind of connected a bunch of things for me because, yeah, now it's like really, it's like I don't really volunteer there any longer. We had a makerspace that was nearby, and they kind of moved a little bit further out, so it's not really convenient for me to get out and do courses there. But teaching, giving back is a big thing.
Yeah, and I think and you teach now too, right? And
Mhm.
I'm also teaching too. And so I think part of that experience we had in our early years kind of led us towards, um teaching or going that route because we're like, we saw our parents giving back. We're like, we want to do the same thing. And I actually enjoy it. It took me some time. I don't know about you, but for me, maybe if, my start of my career, I was more, just do my work, do the job, and that's it. I didn't really get into like teaching until maybe over the last 8 or some odd years.
Yeah.
Is that the same story for you, or did you get into it right away?
It's funny because it's like I think I always had the ability to do it, but it never. I remember in high school we read the Richard Feynman book. I don't know if you've ever read it or not. It's
No.
I think it's called You're a Good Man, Dr. Feynman, and he was a physics professor, but he worked on things like the Manhattan Project, and he's
Mm.
had some really good just really good stories, and he put them all into a book. And I remember reading this when I was younger in high school and thinking, oh, that's really cool. But there's something he's got, and something he would say a lot was, if you really want to learn something, teach it.
Oh,
And
100%. I couldn't agree more with that. Yeah.
it's so very true. It's a there's nothing that will get you there faster than if you prep to teach.
Yep.
And it's funny because sometimes I've gone through and taught on things that I just learned, that I just figured out like probably, a couple hours before the session. But it's fun to kind of go through and show that off because it's exciting. And the classroom actually kind of feels that excitement of this is new for you. And they kind of catch it and really latch onto that excitement too.
That makes me think, like, is teaching really about knowing more, or it's more about communicating something to people to understand it better than if they were to do it themselves or read it on their own. So you have this ability to communicate and make it easier for people to understand. Doesn't mean that you know it all. It just means that you have the ability to learn it and teach it to people in order for them to digest it in a way that's easier for them to understand.
Right, right. I think the key to being a good teacher is possibly looking for things that are kind of on that edge of, what interests you, what do you need to learn? And then from there, turning around and sharing that. And that's kind of it's really it's fun, it's exciting. I don't know how many times I've gone through and taught things, and you see that one student where it's clicking, everything is just clicking, and you kind of see those eyes open. I mean, I've had it happen multiple times in the classroom
Yeah.
where you just know that one student, this is changing their view on their future. And it's really cool. You just kind of sit back for a second and you're like, oh, cool. I can't believe I
Yeah,
did.
it makes it worth it. Like, I mean, I have a full-time job and and I'm not teaching in my full-time job, but I do teaching on the side and it's different and I think you need to have some it gives me a balance of different types of work, and it's rewarding for that very reason that you pointed out when you see the students appreciate that, what you taught them and it starts clicking for them and it makes it all worthwhile.
That's exactly it. It's amazing. Sometimes following up with folks, and when you see that kind of that line propel,
Yeah.
sometimes where it takes them,
Yep.
it's definitely it makes it worthwhile, very
Yeah,
much so.
for sure. So tell me about this. So you've been a Tableau ambassador
Mhm.
for, I think since 2020, right? Is that
And that's 2019. I'm trying to remember the
2019? 4 to 5 years, right? Over the last 4 to 5 years. And so I just became a Tableau ambassador this year, 2024, for the first time. And so for
congratulations.
me, it's very new. No, thank you. It's very, very new for me, and I'm very excited to join this cohort because I get to meet people like you. And you having been here for for some years, maybe you can shed a light on what is a Tableau ambassador? What does it entail, and what's involved, or what are some of the benefits in being a ambassador?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like I had somebody once kind of ask me, it's like, does this mean you're like one of the best in the world at this? And I don't think it's really that you're one of the best in the world at something. Yeah, I found people that, it's funny because it's like there are a lot of folks out there that are amazing at like Tableau, for example,
Yeah.
and they're just not very public about it, and they don't really share a lot of their things.
Mm.
And I think a lot of us in the community that we know about this. We're kind of always kind of pushing them to hey, put that on public. Hey, why don't you go create a public account, create something where you can share these ideas and share kind of that concept you came up with. And sometimes it's shyness. Sometimes you don't really want to get out there. Sometimes there's a wall for some reason. But it's kind of a point where if you can break past that,
Yeah.
if you can get out there and you start sharing what you're doing, that makes a huge difference. It's really, I think we might be kind of the best at sharing. It's really, I think what we do best is,
Well, I'm a social ambassador, so there's different categories, right? And so social
yeah.
ambassador is more about, going, sharing your knowledge.
Mhm.
Um, you're a social ambassador too, right? Are you ambassador? Are you any other categories as well?
No, no, just the social. And it's funny because the way it started was that, and I've told people this, and I remember that they'd come to me all the time, and they're like, "Hey, I love what you shared on social," and it used to take me aback a lot because the reason I was sharing things, I
Yeah.
would actually retweet a lot of things that I saw on Twitter. And the reason why was I would ride the subway into work.
Yeah.
I may not have enough time to read the full blog post or to read that article. So I would actually go through and hit the retweet button so that I knew anything that I
Ah,
retweeted, I could come back later that afternoon when I was kind of going back home
yeah.
and catch back up on that. And this was something that I really didn't want. I didn't want it to get away from me. There was no way of saving it at the time. So I just kept retweeting things that I'm like, hey, this is brilliant. I got to check this out.
Yeah.
Or I really want to dive deeper into this. And it was kind of my own way of saving this for myself. But as I started to see, I started getting input from other people, and they're like, hey, this is really cool. How did you find this? And it was just me kind of hitting, the bottom of the internet, really looking for cool stuff. And it became me, inadvertently sharing with everyone out there on a social media platform. But that's kind of it. It's as simple as anything you see and you may want to come back to, go ahead and share it. Anything you see that you think is kind of noteworthy, share
Yeah.
it. You're kind of elevating others. And then at that point, kind of when I started to realize that, oh, the person who wrote this might see this, or really this is kind of hitting more people just by me sharing this out to the people that follow me,
Mm.
which I started growing a following just for kind of having all the cool stuff,
Yeah.
and that was actually pretty cool because now I could kind of communicate and respond, and in some cases it's just you can ask that question of why did you use this color? Why didn't you go with that, kind of a more subdued color for this? And usually the answers were really good. And it kind of became my own way of like kind of asking those questions. Yeah.
It's funny because your initial purpose was for yourself and for your own learning.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
as a result, you ended up taking other people along on that journey with you to learn with you,
Right.
right? And then so then from there, did you start creating your own content eventually once you started retweeting? And then is that kind of what it led you towards becoming a Tableau ambassador? Tell me about, like, can you tie them together? Like, how did you, what's the process of becoming a Tableau ambassador? And do you have to have certain prerequisites or requirements, or, like, what's the story there?
There are none really. I mean, there are some, but
Yeah.
really it's like kind of a process to do it. There's nothing that's like etched in stone. There's no, there's no definitive way there. It's funny because you'll see folks just they've gone out and they've worked at kind of just being a social sharer of kind of their Tableau work for a long time, and they might not have made it into the ambassador program after all of this. And it's funny, it's like I've seen people get frustrated, and it's almost like it becomes a goal, and I'm like, no, it shouldn't be a goal. It should be something that becomes very organic, as you kind of come into this. I think if you're kind of focusing on it,
Yeah.
it's something you can't quite focus on, because the second you focus on it, you're too specific. It's something that it becomes kind of a way of life. It's you're out there and you're trying to share, and you're trying to kind of build community, um, I don't know. I had a really good conversation with somebody once at the Tableau conference.
Hmm.
And their question was, they're like, this place is phenomenal. It's like the people, the conversations I'm having here, just incredible. And they're like, what makes this so different than they're like, I've been to hundreds of other conferences and they're really boring and
Yeah.
stuffy, and
Yeah.
I get nothing out of it.
Yeah.
And I pretty much have to go there because I have to check a box for work that I went to this conference. And I did some sort of career learning and everything. So really, the idea behind it is different. It's more of, you have to do this. Whereas at the Tableau conference, or one thing this person also noted was, like, I've been talking to all these people and I have not met one single jerk. Somebody who was super confident, somebody who was, and it's funny because in the conversation, I'm like, well, you kind of figured it out.
Yeah.
One of the things about that conference that makes it different than other conferences is that no one is doing this data hoarding thing where it's like, no, you can't look at my paper. And no, they're always like, here, this is what I'm doing. Look right here. This is how I figured it out. I went to these sites,
Mm.
and everyone there is, really, really, really adept at sharing their secrets. And I think that whole group there has kind of figured out that really career security, kind of that job security thing you've always heard people talk about.
Yeah.
Not about having that one thing you do and hiding it from everyone and not showing them how to do it. It's more about taking that one thing you do, throwing it out there, and making it so that others can do it. And that's kind of more job security in this market versus kind of how it used to be. It used to be that kind of that knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Now it's more about kind of the being open and instructing being powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's changed. And I think that's kind of, if you start looking at it from that direction, the path to ambassadorship becomes very, very easy. It's what you know, what you can share. And sometimes you may not even know it perfectly. It's more about getting people and connecting those, networking too, and getting those
Yeah.
people connected to those right networks.
Yeah. And that's what drew me initially to Tableau was the community.
Mhm.
I started working in Tableau, and then I went to the conference. And I remember the first conference I went to was in Austin.
Mhm.
Did you go to that one? That
Oh
was
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Was that 2016?
2016, I think. Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
election year. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, election year, that's right.
Mhm.
And I loved it. I came back and I was like, wow, this is something that I want to do and I want to grow with. And from there, I made it a mission to be like Tableau is going to be the focus of my work and my career. And as a result, now 8 years later, I'm a Tableau ambassador. I'm teaching Tableau. My full-time job is working in Tableau. And I have to admit, does not mean I know everything. This is so like especially when I go to these conferences and I see what people are doing, I'm like, these people know way more than me. I am not the best at in Tableau,
Right.
but I may have some value to add to share with people.
Mhm.
And I think Tableau really encourages that. And I think part of this ambassador program is really to get these cohort of people. And I think we're what, like 300 people across the globe. The Tableau ambassadors, the social ambassadors were about like 60. But
Mhm.
and our goal, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because this is my first year, is to continue doing what we're doing and to share information,
Mhm.
and also to meet fellow ambassadors, and then also they share. I think Tableau shares what's new and upcoming. Kind of gives us the inside scoops as well, right?
Mhm. Very
So,
much so. Yeah, it's incredible because I mean, in a way, it's funny because it's there's the community kind of gives everyone a way and a path to become an ambassador of sorts, and that's kind of it's very enabling. The way you learn, the way everything just kind of unfurls is it's set up that way. So yeah, I think that's kind of a kind of part of the community and
yeah,
part of how the community is organized that way. Is
yeah,
it, essentially everyone's an ambassador. You can kind of do this, at your office, at your local user group, kind of start off small and see kind of how it builds up. Uh,
I didn't give it any thought about becoming a Tableau ambassador. I knew about the ambassador program and I thought it was cool. I just never thought I could become one. Somebody nominated me or anonymously.
mhm.
I still don't know who that person is. I just got an email saying I was nominated for Tableau Ambassador. And then at that point, I'm like, I might as well apply for it. Let's just give it a go. And and I ended up getting it. So really, like I think a lot of people maybe they don't feel like they're good enough or they don't have a shot. But what's the harm in trying? You put yourself out there and you have really nothing to lose.
I've seen ambassadors make it, and they didn't quite even really understand what a Tableau ambassador was, but they're doing it. They're doing the thing, and they got nominated right away. And it was just it's interesting because I think that's probably the most organic way in.
Yeah.
Kind of you're doing that already, and you're kind of living that life. Then yeah, it makes perfect sense. Where there's kind of outlets, and you've got this reach. You're able to get to an audience, and it makes a huge difference for people. They kind of start to figure out, oh, we can do this too. It's fun because it's like sometimes I love like even kind of the edge of Tableau. What are people doing? It's just way out there, and like you'll see like people build video games in Tableau. I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, it's kind of, but and I love the other folks kind of coming from like a business perspective, going, why would you do this? And I'm like, there's always something out there that can be unlocked. It's really funny. I mean, like a lot of the things that
What do you
Tristan.
mean? What do you mean by why would you do this? Why would you become a Tableau ambassador?
Oh no, not even that. It's just kind of why are you out kind of in these fringes? Like, why would you build a video game
Oh
in,
yeah.
in Tableau? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's like I always see it like the fringes are beautiful and they're kind of where you get inspiration from. But there are folks like Tristan and Jesse, what they're doing with a lot of their a lot of the extensions that they're building for Tableau.
Mm.
Really, I think they've gone and they've hit that kind of that outer limit. And now there was just one little technology change at Tableau that now makes them able to build these extensions out. And that kind of that connection when they found it, man, it explodes. And that's kind of it too. It's just like don't be afraid to get out there, and get to those, why would you build this? Build it because you never know what might change along the way, technology wise. And a lot of things that you can't see coming. All of a sudden that kind of shifts over and like Tableau adding extensions. Wow, we can do this now. We can start building these. We become data devs. There's a whole new group of data dev ambassadors.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Really,
think
really interesting.
I think getting back to your point, like why do you do this? And I'm not talking about like those projects, but just in general, why do you become a Tableau ambassador? Why do I have a YouTube channel or a podcast? Really, at the end of the day, I think it's really just to like network and share information. And if you love what you do, you want to share that passion with other people and you want to share that knowledge. And what it leads to, you don't know.
Mhm.
I'm not, I don't have enough views on my YouTube channel to make money. Like, that's not my goal.
No,
That's
no.
not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I want to talk to people like you, and I want to share this out to people. And it's a great way, like LinkedIn's a great way to network and learn and meet people and talk with people. And so having a podcast for me is another way to do that as well.
Very much so. It's great to get out there, and it's not about it's not an ego thing. It's more about just kind of self growth. Meeting different people, making the connections, and also making it so that you're kind of sharing this. It's like we were talking a couple of days ago about kind of being at conference and being recognized at conference and how weird of an experience it is to just be walking down the hall and have somebody realize, oh, it's this, it's that. You're over here. You did this, you did that. oh, that's right. And it's like, oh, I went to your session. It was excellent. And it's great, but it's also freaky in a way because afterwards you leave and you go from this environment where people recognize you to you hit the grocery store and nobody recognizes
So
you.
is that what happened? So I have yet to be at a Tableau conference after being an ambassador. So I'll be there next year in San Diego in April. Do they have do they have special programs for ambassadors? Is like what happens at the
It's
conference?
it's interesting because it's not even that you're recognized in any. I think sometimes we'll get buttons and such that we can put on
Yeah,
our link, but it's not really even that. It's more I think people know you from the work you've done.
the work you've
Like
done.
you'll never know who's watching your YouTube channel. Who's watching these.
Mhm.
And it's funny because it blows me away. I'm also I'm kind of I love the music industry and kind of recording and all of this, but I'm also kind of more in the technology of the music and have building these filters and these boxes and and it's interesting because I'm also in that world too, but it blows me away when folks get out on on YouTube or on TikTok and they start to just kind of show off their music and they're recognized places or you never know who's watching and just watching somebody who said he was getting messages from his musical heroes for something he put out there on YouTube or the person who's trying to show how to play a certain song I think you can tell I love guitars
Yeah.
and and they actually had the artist contact them from their video and go, hey, yeah, you've got it, but you got this part wrong. And they show them how to do it. And it just, little things like that, just getting out there and putting it out, you never know who's watching. And it makes a huge difference. And that's kind of it. You'll notice that in conference because you'll be walking along and all of a sudden you notice that look that people give and they just kind of turn on the escalator and they're making eye contact and at first the first time it ever happened I'm like what was that what was that about? That person almost broke their neck what happened
Yeah.
then you start to realize oh you know what yeah I presented here I did this I did that when you talk to people they're like oh I saw you at this Tableau user group or I saw when you presented back in 2016 and that was really career changing for me and it makes a difference, and it is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I will. It's very weird, but
Yeah. And also you get to meet all the fellow ambassadors, right? So this is like, we're across the globe and we don't all live in the same area. And so it's an opportunity to meet with other ambassadors and I'm assuming there are meetups that you arrange at Tableau conference as well.
that's definitely it. That's definitely it. It's as time goes on, you start to kind of make it's fun to kind of come in to not just your cohort and a group of like new ambassadors, but you start to meet other ambassadors and you start to find that it's not even just like you get to the point of like really good friendship, really tight friendships, and it went from creating little groups where you could talk to each other about Tableau issues,
Hmm.
and now we've gotten to the point where I'm part of a couple of different groups where we don't even talk Tableau. It's funny because it's like people on these groups will actually apologize if they have a technical question. You're like, oh wait, I'm sorry, sorry, I got to break the fun. But has anybody ever done this? Has anybody
Yeah.
ever built this? Or let me show you something really cool I just did. But it's rare now. It's more about kind of career and family and kind of what we're doing for fun.
Yeah, you make friends, right? It's a friendship, right?
You find a lot of people who have many things in common, and we've actually made friends that I may be tighter with a lot of the Tableau folks than
Hmm.
I am with some of the folks I went to college with, and it interests me because it's like that group I was really tight with, and now I'm like, oh hey, look at this. So there's yet another group, and it's just another group of friends. They're really good, and the more you get to know people, they're just really good people.
Yeah. Uh, Listen, man, this is, I mean, we've talked about a lot of things, but there's still so much more we can talk about. All right. Like we didn't even get into how this can help with your own personal career growth and being an individual contributor. and how you can get into, utilize this to help you grow in your career. Maybe we might do another podcast,
Yeah, yeah, I
focus
think
on
it'd be
that
great.
in
I
the
think it'd be
future.
great.
But I think this was a great podcast to introduce, what is a Tableau ambassador, and um, maybe motivate some people out there to become one and apply, right?
Absolutely,
And
absolutely. You can
get
nominate
yourself out
yourself. Yeah, if you need to, you really there's kind of a case where it's like if you feel like you've had an extraordinary year, go ahead and nominate yourself. And you never quite know. Like you, for example, you never knew you were getting a nomination.
there.
Um, I tend to feel like it should be organic. It's like, yeah, let's see if there's somebody out there remembers about me. And really that's kind of it. It's like if you're making that impact, if you're helping, it's getting out there. But at the same time, too, if you feel like you had an extraordinary year, let people know. Go
Yeah.
out there. Just kind of remind folks.
Nothing
But
wrong with self-promotion or building your own brand, right?
I mean, really, if you think about it, it's what you have to do in the office. It's
Yes.
something like you need to let people know that this is happening. And I mean, it's funny because I think I tend to do the opposite, where I kind of let the work kind of talk for itself.
Yeah.
I'm like, there really is no need for me to, for me to get any kind of more accolades or anything else. I'm really happy. But you're building other people. And that's kind of the other part too, is you're if you've really got it, you're able to build people up. And that's kind of where the nominations come from, where they're like, this guy is, he does all this and he's kind of helping everyone else build up. And everyone sees it.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need to take the gold for yourself. You're kind of doing it for the team. And kind of if you think about it in that sense, you're kind of helping the entire team kind of get across that goal. So
Yeah.
that's kind of more of a way through. And it's like start helping elevate others. It's kind of comes to a point where it's like you've been an ambassador for X number of years. It's not about me anymore. It's about new folks, bringing people in and kind of helping them, really understand that, hey, they can do this too.
Yeah.
And there are places, I've seen great ambassadors just kind of go, hey, you know what? It's like I've done everything I needed to. I'm going to step back and I'm going to give folks a spot where it's like I've had a previous ambassador spot, but go ahead and take this because it's like I've accomplished so much,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a nice gesture from folks like that too. It's like being able to kind of take a step back if they're if they're ready to.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, I love that. Love the comments there, and I'm hoping that people can have some takeaways from this, and help them grow them in their own personal growth as well. But and I'm looking forward to meeting you in person as well, right? And so
so very much
hopefully
so.
that happens. I'm expecting you are coming next year to
Oh,
Tableau.
very much so. Very much
Okay.
so.
All right, great. So we'll definitely meet up there, but this has been great. If anyone wants to connect with you, what's the best way? Is it LinkedIn?
Just LinkedIn. LinkedIn is fantastic. I'm Cesar Pico. It's kind of easy to find me. There's not many not many of me on LinkedIn. It's a good thing about having a more unique-ish name. I'm very easy to find.
Yeah, and I'll put your profile on the in the show notes for the podcast as well, so people can connect with you.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, this has been great, Caesar. We'll definitely do this again. Well, we could talk about a number of different topics.
Absolutely. Happy to. Happy to anytime. True data nerds. We can talk on these topics for hours. So
For sure, for sure. All right, thank you, Caesar.
very welcome.